I would say my favorite project that I did during DemTech was the subvertisement project. So subvertisements are basically mocks of advertisements. So one I did personally was eco-washing and like the car industry. A lot of people advertise their electric cars as being great for the environment when in reality they're actually not. I thought it was really interesting to show like all the effects that electric cars and like the creation of electric cars has on the environment as opposed to what people think or people want you to think they have on it.
And what about the batteries? Ah, yes, the magical batteries, made from lithium, cobalt, and nickel. Mined from the earth in ways that are anything but clean. Ever heard of lithium extraction? Whole landscapes drained of water, ecosystems destroyed, and let's not forget about people.
My favorite project was the Subvertisement podcast. So basically we researched a issue at hand or something like that, and we made a podcast about it, and we put in graphics and everything, made graphics that almost mock certain industries that are taking advantage of, I guess, the general population. So for me, I did alcohol sales to the youth. I was able to research that and put some statistics in and make some cool graphics.
They're still just exercising their freedom of speech and marketing their brands to be eye-catching. You can't tell a brand to look unfun. But how can they tailor their advertising to legal adults rather than the eager-to-party high schoolers and college freshmen? Do they even want to, given that almost 10% of beer sales come from underage drinking? Those are questions that me and you frankly can't answer right now, which means they are winning.
I feel like we were all able to pick something that we were passionate about talking about. Somewhere along the way, aging became a dirty word, and we're being sold creams and serums to prevent fine lines because even before we've hit 25. And if you think that's bad, brands are now marketing anti-aging products to teenagers, which is crazy to think about. And now talking about the skincare rise, which should be a good thing, except brands have convinced people that they need a 12-step routine to have a normal skin. And suddenly having visible pores or texture on your skin, which are all completely natural, is a reason to have a pricey solution and to spend a lot of money.
Me and my friends go shopping all the time when we're bored, and we're not often responsible with our finances. And so a lot of that, I think, is like a product of social media and advertisements and how they try and get you to spend money when you don't need to, or like buy the newest thing when you really, don't need to. In reality, all of our little Target trips and Starbucks runs are contributing to a greater problem because we tend to enable each other instead of being responsible with our finances.
So I chose an ad. It was called I Addict, which was based on something that you're addicted to. So I chose like social media, being on my phone 24/7, and you just had to make a video using AI generation to put it all together.
I decided to do a poll to see how many people would buy a new Apple product as soon as seeing an ad for it, such as an iPhone, Apple Watch, or iPad. And I thought that most people would, but that wasn't the case. I had one of the people who voted no explain why.
However, as consumers, we have the power to help solve these issues. By supporting small businesses, seeking alternatives for products, or boycotting Amazon products, you can help counteract Amazon's dominance.
Hi, my name's Haley, and my favorite project in this class was the Biases project, where we had to research biases and find real-world examples to go with it. I looked at examples in healthcare and politics, and it was really interesting to see the appeal to fear there.
I chose to focus on the spotlight bias, which is the idea that other people are paying a lot more attention to you than they actually are. And I feel like that resonates a lot with my life currently, because as a 21-year-old girl, I find myself constantly looking for approval from my friends when I'm posting anything. And like I said in the podcast, nobody's gonna look at it for more than 15 seconds, if that, and you tend to notice little details about yourself way sooner than other people do. And I think that that effect really resonated with me, that bias really resonated with me, because I see it in my everyday life.
Yeah, so every time you post, you kind of gather a group, you make a panel of your friends, and you send the photo, and you're like, is this good to post? And they're like, yeah, but then you're like, oh, is this one better? And it's the same exact photo.
Wait, you do that?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Wait, tell me how that works.
So there's you take photos.
Yes.
And then you send them to your friends, and you're like, does this photo look
in
better?
direct messages.
Yeah. Or like you'll like sit in a group, like if you're like hanging out, like you'll be like, okay, like look at this photo, like do I post this one, whatever. So then you pick the photo in which you think is best, even though there's barely anything different. It's just your head's like slightly tilted the other way. Yeah.
Wow.
And then once you pick the photo, then you pick a caption, and then it's just like a whole thing.
Whole thing.
Yeah, and another thing, like even like not even for like Instagram posts too, like story posts, which are only there for 24 hours. Like if you're at dinner with your friends, you have a designated friend that's gonna take the photo for the entire group and tag everybody in it, and it has to be perfect. It's like a whole like 15-minute ordeal of like before anybody can take a bite of their food, you have to make sure it's perfect.
It's a very long process.
Nobody cares what you're eating. Nobody's gonna look at it for more than a few seconds. Nobody's gonna care what drink you're drinking, but like you have to craft the photo to look perfect. Yeah.
This is insane.
Yeah.
This is a crazy world to live in.
No, I agree. I agree it's nuts, but
Professor Golda came into class and gave us a list of biases and told us to pick one and research it. So for the bias that I chose was the sunk cost fallacy, which is basically this idea of you keep putting money into a project that's clearly failing, but you won't abandon ship because you put so much into it already. And we were required to find real world examples, so I used Twitter and Elon Musk as an example, because Elon has put a lot of money into Twitter, but it's also lost a lot of money. I think it's just interesting, and people can realize that they can hop off the boat rather than going down with the ship.
The sunk cost fallacy was the second one I did. So the sunk cost fallacy is basically when you stick with something despite it not working just because you're putting a lot of effort and money into it. This matters because also it leads to poor decision making. People get overly invested and it's hard for them to admit that it's a failure. An example of this I used was Elon Musk buying Twitter and converting it to X rather. And Elon has lost so much money based off Twitter, and even if he sold it now, he would still lose a lot of money. And he just keeps doing what he's doing.
In like your local news, you saw a lot of plane crash news. In January and early February, there's 2 crashes a week apart, one by DC and one in Philadelphia. And the news covered it, and they made it to be such a big tragedy, which it was. But then everyone got scared because there was 2 plane crashes that they can't fly because planes are so dangerous, when in reality planes are still the safest way of travel. But since the news recently covered such a rarity, that's what the news does, they cover rarities, it made everyone scared of flying and everything, so that's a recency bias. So earlier in the semester we did an oblique project, which kind of didn't have a lot of parameters, which kind of made it a unique project. It kind of let us explore any aspect of technology or communications that we found interesting. So I chose to use AI to generate baseball images and kind of see how AI interprets a regular sport such as baseball, and then I created rules based on the photos and stuff. So I think it was a cool process to like experiment with AI and see how AI's creative process differs from a human creative process.
For the oblique project, if I told you what it was, I think I'd be giving away the secret of it. But truthfully, I don't really know it either. The entire point of this project was kind of just create something so abstract that has a meaning behind it that really only you could come up with. I first started off by just using this kind of cardboard cutout of a tree, and on the leaves I had just wrote something on it that I really enjoyed, whether that was like a movie or like a show or something like that, which eventually evolved into just glass with ice in it and liquid, and I just filmed the ice melting throughout a time-lapse video and posted that, which I kind of interpreted that as a way of how a leaf could fall off the tree, ice could melt, but then I reversed the footage and it froze back up again. Kind of how the metaphor for that, at least I thought, was kind of how no matter where you start from, if you fall down, you can always build yourself back up. That's kind of what I was going for with that.
So hi, my name is Oliver. My favorite project for DemTech was the Oblique project. I liked getting to work with music software and putting music to image. I thought that was a really interesting part of the project.
And I chose to do career versus self. So I talked about how like my main career that I wanted to do was to be a teacher, but then I reflected on myself because I thought that because of my learning disability that I wasn't going to be able to become a teacher.
But the other thing we did was the copyright copyleft, which was inspired by a film made by Brett Gaylor all about copyright laws. And what I mostly talked about that in that little podcast we did was about Disney and their stance on copyright. I just found it extremely hypocritical how Disney, a company that became extremely famous for taking old classic fairy tales and stories and just making them literally again, but for a new audience, gets mad when other people do the same thing, take a character like Mickey Mouse and just do a variation of that. And then they crack down on them and get mad and then force them to pay the artist an immense amount of money that they probably don't have, even though once again, that's exactly what they did when they were starting out. So that was what I mostly focused on with that. I feel like Disney, out of anyone, should know something about copyright, considering that that's how they became famous, by taking well-known characters and doing their own thing with them. And Walt Disney himself ran into roadblocks trying to get characters like Mary Poppins, trying to get the rights to that to make a movie. They made a movie about him trying to get the rights to that.
In the film, they say sampling of a song can break copyright law, and that, it does kind of make sense depending on how much of the song you use. But the part that I really found funny was that, even sampling a single note from a song can break copyright law. And that's just super interesting to me because, say I make a song right here, right? I play like one note on a piano or like a synthesizer or something. And then some random artist comes up and says, hey, that note is sampling from my song, like minute 357 of this song. You can't use that. Even though I recorded it, it's just because they're very similar. I feel like that's why you don't see a lot of successful copyright suits in music these days,